Welcome to a new deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, our mission, it's to unpack a really fascinating shift. We're seeing it at the highest levels of leadership. We're looking at how accomplished executives, are moving beyond those traditional roles. They're building these diversified portfolios, leveraging decades of expertise strategically.
That's right. And we're pulling insights today mainly from Your Executive Advantage, which is a Substack publication by Laura Johnson, CEO of LLEJ Careers, LLC. It focuses on, strategic insights for leaders.
Okay.
And they've also shared a related piece, the Portfolio Executive Blueprint.
Right. So these sources, they guide us through this idea of the portfolio executive. It's framed as like the modern alternative to just retiring.
Exactly. The old model, work a long corporate career, then step down. That's becoming less common.
So instead, these seasoned execs are stepping into something new, a curated phase.
Yeah, it's a significant evolution. How experienced leaders are defining their later careers. It's shifting from, winding down to deliberately building something new and impactful.
Okay, so let's dig into the why. Why now? Why is this portfolio approach gaining so much traction right now?
Well, there are a couple of big forces at play. First, there's just massive market demand for external expertise. Huge.
How big are we talking?
Well, look at management consulting. That market alone was valued over $300 billion globally in 2024.
Wow.
And it's projected to hit over $450 billion with a B by 2032. Companies really need that high-level help from outside.
Okay, so huge demand for consulting, but it's broader than that.
Oh, yeah. And the nature of work itself is just changing. The sources point out that nearly half, 47% of the global workforce identifies as self-employed now.
Almost half. That's incredible.
It is. So you combine that trend, the rise of self-employment, with the demand for specialized, deep experience. Well, it creates this unprecedented opening for executives.
An opening to monetize their expertise across different channels.
Exactly. Monetize decades of experience across multiple avenues, often simultaneously.
So it's less about finding that one next C-suite job after the last one.
Right. It's much more about architecting something entirely different. Building a career portfolio that consciously uses your reputation, your network, your deep expertise across various gigs at the same time.
And you mentioned an evolution. Is there a psychological shift happening too? It's not seeing this next stage as just like stepping back?
Definitely not. That's key. The mindset change is crucial. Viewing this phase not as a wind down, not a gradual reduction, but as an amplification of your impact.
Amplification. Interesting.
Yeah, you're deploying your wisdom, your influence across different projects, different organizations, rather than just concentrating it in one single place. It's about staying relevant, having purpose.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical, I think.
Yeah.
If you're an executive listening to this, how do you actually build this portfolio? What does that structure, that architecture look like?
So, the blueprint suggests that successful portfolio executives structure their work and their revenue around 4 strategic pillars. Think of these as the core building blocks.
4 pillars. Okay, let's break those down. Where do you start? Maybe with the highest impact stuff.
Exactly. Pillar 1 is premium consulting engagements. Think high income, but also high personal investment. Your time, your focus.
So this is the flagship offering.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Deep, often transformational work. Maybe just 1 or 2 select clients a year. You're solving their biggest problems, major strategic shifts, navigating a crisis, big organizational change, that kind of thing.
And the sources really hammered home the pricing on this, right? It's different.
Absolutely critical. The strategy here is all about value-based pricing, not time-based. You aren't selling hours on a timesheet.
You're selling the outcome.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You're selling decades of experience that lets you solve a massive problem faster, or maybe prevent a costly mistake someone else might make. The sources give a great example, like a CFO who's seen multiple recessions. They can charge a premium for recession-proofing advice, not because it takes X hours, but because it prevents millions in potential losses. That's the value.
Or that auto CEO example.
Yeah, the former automotive CEO commanding, say, $75,000 a month as a retainer for supply chain transformation. Why? Because she stabilized things after the '08 crisis. She has that specific, valuable experience.
And the strategy is to limit these.
Right. Limit these deep engagements strategically. It maintains exclusivity, prevents you from burning out. It keeps the value high.
Okay, that makes total sense. High value, high focus. What's pillar number 2?
Pillar 2, board positions and equity advisory. Now, this typically offers high income potential, but with a relatively lower time commitment, often something like 20, maybe 40 hours a month.
And the pay is good.
Director compensation trends show it's appealing, yeah.
Right.
The average total comp is pretty substantial. And for large cap companies, the median is, quite high, upwards of $300K sometimes.
And it's not always just about the cash retainer, is it?
No, absolutely not. A smart approach, the sources suggest, is targeting maybe 2 or 3 positions across different types of organizations.
Like?
Maybe a public company board, sure. But also consider a private growth stage company board. That's where you often get equity upside. And maybe a nonprofit board you're passionate about.
Ah, the equity piece.
Especially in those growth companies.
It can be very valuable long term, right? So the idea here is you want to maximize positions in this quadrant, high income, lower time, because it offers great leverage, provided you choose roles where you can genuinely add value.
Okay, so high income, high focus consulting, high income, lower focus board roles. What about the middle ground, roles that might need a bit more hands-on time?
That brings us neatly to pillar 3, fractional executive roles in teaching. This tends to fall into the medium income, medium time commitment category.
Fractional roles, like being a part-time CFO or CMO. Exactly. Serving as a fractional CFO for a scaling mid-market company that needs that C-suite brainpower, but maybe not full-time yet. Or executive coaching for high-potential leaders, facilitating workshops, even adjunct teaching at a business school.
So using your operational chops or teaching skills, but in a more structured, maybe recurring way.
Precisely. These kinds of roles, they fill capacity gaps in your week, they provide a steadier income stream, and frankly, they keep you engaged with real-world business challenges or developing the next generation of leaders.
Okay, and the final pillar. This one feels a bit different.
Yeah, pillar 4 is thought leadership and intellectual property. This is often, let's be honest, lower income initially, but it has potentially very high impact and, crucially, scalability.
Scalability, how so?
Well, it's fundamentally about building your reputation and creating assets. Assets that can generate income more passively over time or, and this is key, drive inbound leads for your other pillars.
Ah, so it feeds the rest of the portfolio. What kind of activities are we talking about here?
Things like keynote speaking, writing industry articles, creating regular content on platforms like LinkedIn, maybe authoring a book, appearing on or even hosting podcasts or other media.
So writing an article might not pay much up front.
Right, maybe nothing directly. But it positions you as the expert. And that positioning brings opportunities knocking on your door for consulting, for board roles, for coaching.
Okay, so the strategic goal here isn't direct income so much as generating those inbound opportunities across the board and cementing your market position.
You got it. Solidifying your position as a recognized authority in whatever your niche is.
What strikes me here is how these pillars, they aren't just separate boxes, are they?
Yeah.
They seem to connect, to feed each other.
Oh, absolutely they do. That's one of the most powerful aspects. The most successful portfolio executives really understand this. The sources call it the compound effect or maybe network effects.
Meaning?
Meaning each activity you engage in can amplify the value and the opportunities in the others. It snowballs.
Give me an example.
Sure. Your premium consulting work might uncover a need for a board member at that company or another one like it. Being on a board gives you credibility and visibility, which might lead to speaking invitations.
Okay.
And those speaking engagements, they attract potential consulting or coaching clients from the audience. And all the while, your thought leadership, your articles, your posts is attracting interest across all the pillars.
Wow. So the whole portfolio genuinely becomes more valuable than just adding up the individual parts.
That's the power of it, yes. It creates this kind of virtuous cycle, a sustainable competitive advantage where your different activities reinforce and build on each other over time. It's quite elegant, actually.
And the sources use a matrix to visualize this.
Yeah, the portfolio planning matrix. It's a useful tool, just maps activities across 2 axes, income potential and time investment.
And it puts the 4 pillars into quadrants.
Right. Exactly.
Rah.
So quadrant 1, high income, high time, that's your premium consulting. And remember, the advice is limit these. Just 1 or 2 key engagements.
To avoid burnout, maintain exclusivity.
Got it. Quadrant 2, high income, low time. This is where board positions and equity advisory sit. This is the sweet spot, the quadrant you ideally want to maximize. High leverage for your time, assuming quality roles.
Right.
Quadrant 3, medium income, medium time. Your fractional roles, coaching, teaching. Good for filling capacity, providing consistent income, keeping you grounded operationally.
Steady eddies?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And quadrant 4, low income, high impact. That's your thought leadership, speaking, content creation. Primarily strategic generating inbound leads, positioning yourself.
So it's not just about, doing a bunch of different things randomly. It's actively managing this balance across the quadrants.
It's a completely deliberate architectural process, absolutely. And like we touched on, underpinning all of this is that absolutely critical mindset shift.
Back to pricing.
Back to pricing. Moving decisively from pricing your time to pricing your value.
Why is mastering that psychological piece, that shift around pricing your experience, why is that so make or break for this whole model?
Well, think about it. Your decades of experience. They mean you can solve incredibly complex problems significantly faster. And maybe more importantly, you can prevent far more costly mistakes than someone with less seasoned judgment.
Okay, give me an example again.
Okay, a CEO who's navigated multiple mergers. They can guide a company through a tricky acquisition process in weeks, maybe months, faster than someone learning on the job, avoiding huge potential missteps. That speed and risk avoidance has immense value.
Right.
Or remember that manufacturing exec example, charging, say, $150,000 for a project. It's not based on the hours logged. It's because their specific expertise prevented a potential $2 million inventory write-down and unlocked $500,000 in annual savings.
When you frame it like that, the value is just undeniable.
It really is. And the sources propose a framework for this, a value-based pricing framework. It considers 4 key things.
Okay, what are they?
1, the magnitude of the problem you're solving. How big is it for the client? 2, the impact of the outcome if you nail it. What's the upside? 3, the speed of solution your experience enables. How fast can you deliver? And 4, the risk mitigation your expertise provides. What costly errors are you helping them avoid?
Magnitude, impact, speed, risk mitigation. It's about quantifying that benefit.
Quantifying the tangible benefit you bring, exactly.
And within these pillars, you're also juggling different types of work, right? Some very personalized, others more scalable.
Yes, that's another strategic layer to manage. You need a balance between what we call scalable activities and high-touch engagements.
Define those for me. Scalable first.
Scalable work means you can serve multiple clients or audiences somewhat simultaneously with roughly the same effort. Think developing a workshop curriculum you deliver to different companies. Serving on multiple boards, they have defined time commitments, right? Giving keynotes on your established topics. Maybe creating an online course.
Okay, one to many, essentially. And high touch.
High touch is the opposite. Very customized, intensive one-on-one or one-to-few. This is your deep strategic consulting project for a single client. Your intensive executive coaching engagements. Stepping in for hands-on crisis management. Highly personalized, very demanding.
Is there a rule of thumb for the balance between those two?
The sources suggest aiming for something like maybe 60–70% high-touch, high-value work, because that's often where the deepest impact and the premium fees really lie.
Right.
But you supplement that with, say, 30–40% scalable activities. The scalable stuff helps build your brand, reaches a wider audience, smooths out income, and doesn't always demand that constant, intense focus on one single client problem. It provides a nice balance.
Okay, so if someone listening is thinking, right, this model makes sense conceptually, but how do I actually start? It feels like a big leap. What's a practical first step, or maybe a short-term plan?
Yeah, that's a common question. The sources offer some really useful quick win strategies, focusing just on the first, say, 30 to 60 days.
Okay, first month or two, what do you do?
Weeks 1 and 2. It's all assessment and positioning. Really do a rigorous audit of your skills, your experiences. What are your most marketable areas? What problems can you uniquely solve? Then, research compensation benchmarks. What are board seats paying? What are consulting rates? And crucially, update your LinkedIn profile. Your online presence needs to reflect this new portfolio positioning, not just your last corporate job.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, weeks 3 and 4.
Network activation. Make a targeted list, companies, industries, types of engagements you're interested in. Draft a really concise value proposition for yourself as a portfolio executive. Then start scheduling calls, coffees, informational interviews. Reach out to former colleagues, board contacts, people in your target sectors. And maybe look into relevant board matching services. Get the word out.
Actively work the network. Weeks 5 and 6.
Content and credibility building. Start demonstrating that thought leadership. Publish your first article. LinkedIn Pulse is great for this. Schedule a few speaking opportunities. Even if they're small, maybe unpaid initially, just get practice, get visibility. Create a simple professional website, doesn't have to be fancy. And develop some case study templates to showcase your past wins, framed around the value you created.
Concrete examples. Okay. Finishing the first 2 months, weeks 7 and 8.
Pilot engagement time. Actively try to launch your first consulting project or advisory relationship, even if it's small. Apply for those first board positions you identified. Maybe start coaching 1 or 2 individuals. This is key. Firmly establish those value-based pricing frameworks right from the start for these initial offerings. Don't default to hourly billing.
Wow, okay. That breaks down what seems like a huge shift into very manageable, concrete steps for the first couple of months. What about the longer game? Building this out over, say, a year, 18 months?
Right. It's a marathon, not a sprint. The sources outline a longer-term development roadmap, maybe 12 to 18 months, and break it into phases.
What are those phases?
Well, the first few months are really foundation building. You're establishing those anchor high-value client relationships, building out your thought leadership platform more seriously, developing repeatable processes for how you actually deliver your work, and importantly, setting up systems for generating referrals.
Okay, build the base, then.
Months 4 to 6, roughly, are about portfolio expansion. This is where you actively add your second pillar revenue streams, maybe board roles if you started with consulting. You start optimizing your pricing as you get feedback and results. You secure more board or advisory seats. You aim for paid speaking gigs now.
Scaling up. What's next?
Months 7 to 9 focus on system optimization. Think about implementing tools, maybe a simple CRM system to manage contacts and pipeline. Develop your signature methodologies for consulting or coaching. Create more scalable content, like maybe that online course. Really solidify your premium positioning in the market.
Getting more efficient and established.
Exactly. Then, months 10 to 12 are about portfolio maturation. The goal here is hitting your target balance across those 4 pillars we talked about, ensuring you're consistently applying value-based pricing everywhere, planning for how you sustain client and network relationships long-term, and aiming for a sustainable work week, that 35 to 45-hour range, ideally. It's not about working crazy hours.
Right, sustainability. And beyond the first year.
Months 13 to 18 are often about legacy building. This could be launching a major thought leadership project, like writing that book, establishing mentorship programs to give back, maybe exploring licensing your intellectual property, structuring your offerings for long-term impact, beyond just your direct time.
It really maps out a journey. It's a deliberate, phased strategy, isn't it? Not just something that happens by accident.
Absolutely not. Very intentional.
And how do you measure success with this kind of career? It feels like it's got to be more than just the old annual salary number.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
And should be. The sources suggest tracking key metrics across several dimensions, not just income. Well, okay, there are financial metrics, of course. Your total annual revenue, tracking its progression, maybe aiming to meet or exceed your old salary eventually. Revenue diversification, making sure no single client or stream is, say, more than 40% of your income for stability. Your average hourly realization effectively, what's your rate across everything, and your pipeline value, what's the potential future work look like?
Okay, the money side. What else?
Then, professional metrics. Things like your client retention rate. How many referrals are you generating organically? What's the reach of your thought leadership followers, views, engagement, and the number? And importantly, the quality of your board or advisory positions. Are they strategic?
Makes sense. Professional standing.
Then, crucially, personal fulfillment metrics. How's your work-life integration? Are you hitting that target work week, or are you constantly underwater? Are you getting intellectual stimulation? Is the work actually interesting and challenging you? Can you measure your impact? What are the quantifiable outcomes you're helping clients achieve? And is your legacy building moving forward? Are you feeling fulfilled?
That's huge. Fulfillment.
Absolutely. And finally, strategic position metrics. How's your market recognition? Are you getting invited to speak, winning awards, getting positive mentions? What's the quality of your network? Is your pricing power increasing over time? Can you command higher fees? And how's your competitive differentiation? What makes you stand out from others?
That paints a much richer, more holistic picture of success than just the bottom line number.
It has to. It's about building a career that's not only financially rewarding, but also deeply fulfilling, genuinely impactful, and importantly, sustainable for the long haul.
So to kind of bring this deep dive toward a close, this portfolio executive model, it's clearly way more than just, finding another job after you leave a big corporate role.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fundamental strategic reinvention. It really is. It's about honoring all that accumulated wisdom you've gained over decades and creating completely new dynamic pathways. Pathways for both impact and income that, frankly, weren't really widely available or even conceived of for previous generations of leaders.
And the sources make a really interesting point about AI, that in a world where algorithms can process data incredibly fast, that human element, the seasoned judgment, navigating complexity, the relationships, that becomes more valuable, not less.
Couldn't agree more. It becomes the premium. It's about strategically licensing those decades of unique, hard-won expertise. Your career isn't necessarily winding down at all. It's evolving into what could potentially be its most strategically sophisticated, most leveraged, and maybe most impactful phase yet.
Yeah.
The sources sum it up nicely, I think. They say, the question isn't if you, as an experienced executive, are qualified to build this kind of career.
Right.
The real question is, are you prepared? Prepared to price your experience appropriately for its true value, and prepared to actually take the steps to architect this next chapter.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? This deep dive into the portfolio executive model, drawing from your executive advantage and those related insights. Well, it paints a pretty clear picture, doesn't it? A path for experienced leaders like you to monetize your wisdom, maintain significant influence, maybe even amplify it. And the sources really emphasize, as we just heard, the real question isn't about your capability. You likely have that in spades. It's about your readiness. Readiness to step into this new model, price your experience based on the value you deliver, and actively build this next phase.
It's a proactive stance.
It is.
Yeah.
So think about your own accumulated wisdom, that unique blend of skills, experiences, relationships you've built over your career. How could you begin to architect your experience into a diversified portfolio of impact and income? What's just one concrete step, maybe something small you could take this week? Could be towards identifying that unique value, practicing how you articulate it, or maybe activating your network with this new perspective in mind. That's something powerful for you to ponder as you navigate your own leadership journey.